to counter corruption, looking at what other countries are doing. The unending reports about corruption in Uganda continue to shock many, as billions of shillings continue to be stolen from the public coffers by those entrusted to protect those same resources. Those stealing the funds that could have been invested in critical areas have devised means to protect themselves in syndicates, jointly plotting how to steal and then lying about it. What is disturbing is the fact that many who have stolen often go scot-free and get protected by their friends within the political class. This explains why the fight against graft has often taken a partisan line, leading to empty political statements. President Museveni has often said the fight against corruption is he said the NRM is determined to fight corruption. Now, while the opposition and civil society say this is lip service, NRM members say that the sacking of several ministers in the recent past justifies the determination by the head of state. There is a belief that Uganda might need a new crop of leaders to be able to clean up the mess, and that corruption must determine the next crop of leaders that's in the next election in 2016. It is very difficult to quantify the amount stolen from state coffers, but the World Bank estimates that up to $500 billion shillings is stolen each year, mainly through the procurement process. This week, civil society organizations launched activities to step up the fight against corruption, and one of the steps they have taken is to document all the major scandals and what has been lost. So tonight we ask, do we need to change the crop of leaders today to be able to eliminate corruption? Also, what other measures can be undertaken to discourage corruption, looking at examples in other countries? Our guests tonight, Honorable Martin Drito, Madi-Okolo County MP, also member of the African Parliamentarians Network Against Corruption. You're most welcome, Honorable Drito.
Thank you very much.
We're also joined by Ms. Hellena Okiringi, Programs Manager at the Uganda Youth Network. You're most welcome, Hellena.
Good evening, listeners.
We're also joined by Dr. David Mushabe, Senior Partner. Dr. David Mushabe is from the African Rainbow Conference. It's a peace and non-violence NGO. You're most welcome, David.
Good evening, listeners and viewers, and thank you for inviting me.
Honorable Martin, is the NRM committed to fighting corruption?
Absolutely. Corruption itself actually is one of the issues we consider very seriously in our constitution, and corruption is something that we as a party try everything possible to fight. But as you have very well said, corruption is an issue which has been embedded so much in the society. And the fight against corruption is a fight that is not being fought without resistance from those who are corrupt. And therefore, much as the party, we're really very keen on fighting this issue. It's a task that should not involve only the NRM, but the general populace as a whole. So definitely we are against corruption. As I earlier on have already said, it's a part of our manifesto to resist corruption and to fight it as much as we can.
Hellena, is the NRM committed to fighting corruption?
If what we see is what we are calling commitment, then no, absolutely not. I do not see political will. I do not see political must to fight corruption. We have been fed, our ears are numb. We are tired of news story after news story, listening to scandal after scandal. This week, if you've been listening to news, the 7 o'clock news here, our teachers were on strike. On Monday, a classroom in Mityana collapsed. They went to hospital to get care. That doctor was on strike because the hospital is understaffed. So if you want to tell me about commitment, and commitment means leaving thieves scot-free, commitment means, putting the needs of a few before the needs of the majority, then perhaps that's what they call commitment. But as a young person, as a person who is witnessing this mundaneness, around me, I do not think there is political will, want, or must to fight corruption. Absolutely not.
David Mushabe.
Thank you, Edmond. You see, recently, actually about a couple of weeks ago, I read an article written by Honorable Manya Mushega. He said that we are sugarcoating thievery and we are calling it corruption. Corruption is a baptism name for stealing. Uganda is being stolen and taken to the dry cleaner by people who plunder, and they slap them on the wrist, and many times no slap on the wrist. Honorable here has talked about, sacking the ministers, that is evidential of the commitment of the government. This is a temporary sacking. They sack one today, the next reshuffle, they are back. It's the same group. They come back as ministers. So you cannot tell me that there is commitment. Here in US, where there's this former head of CIA, just simple,
David Petraeus.
Yeah, what we call like no big deal. He didn't hurt anybody. It was just cheating on his wife. The guy said, I'm not worthy of being called a leader, so I'm stepping down.
And he's a distinguished fella. Afghanistan, Iraq.
And what is this? BBC.
He also fought in certain bushes.
Exactly. BBC, a senior manager, stepped down.
Director General.
Because there was a story that was tarnishing his image. A leader is always exemplary. A leader leads by example, not by words. It is not like, do as I say, but not as I do. That is the modus operandi here in Uganda. Our leaders tell us, do as I say, but not as I do. There is no government commitment against to fight corruption.
But you're an NRM man, how can you talk like that?
No, but you see, in any country or even an organization that wants to recover from its illness, it must address the illness that it is facing. If we keep quiet, you see what has happened? Corruption in this country, actually, stealing has been politicized. Theft has been politicized. If I talk about an NRM man that is a thief or an NRM woman that is a thief, they say, now you have joined opposition. And then the parliament agrees, then the caucus changes, no, this is the party position. So stealing has been politicized in Uganda. We think now it is the party being attacked, but we don't know that it is the whole nation. The moral fabric of the country is being eroded completely. So we have people...
The party doesn't benefit from the corruption.
Even eventually the party doesn't benefit from corruption. We have people who are self-absorbed. They love themselves too much, not patriots. They hate the country. Eventually, the chickens shall come home to roost. Because it is their children, it is our children and grandchildren who are going to pay for the sins of today. How do we plunder billions and billions? I mean, in the last few months, trillions and trillions every day, and we say no, everything is okay.
But they have to fend for their families, those men.
Many people fend for their
need, not for greed.
Yes, but there is what in law, there is what they call willful blindness. I urge my brothers and sisters in government to not just close their eyes and pretend the problem has gone away. That is willful blindness. It is a bad sin.
Martin, do you think the NRM is succeeding against corruption in its fight? You say it sounds all the good heart.
Yeah, well,
It's succeeding.
You see, one thing the nation should know is that members of the NRM, the majority of NRM members are totally against corruption, totally committed to fight corruption. And when you look at individuals like me, I'm a member of APNAC, African Parliamentarians Network Against Corruption. Actually, I happen to be the treasurer over it. And at the same time, I sit on the Public Accounts Committee.
Yes, go on.
And these two institutions are institutions that are seriously fighting corruption. Now, the issue of corruption, as I said earlier on, is a very complex issue. The role of members of parliament, the role of members of NRM are clear-cut. For instance, we members of parliament on PAC, we members of parliament in NRM, the majority, I said, are completely opposed to corruption, because corruption is a disease that is not feeding most of us.
Why is the party, why are we failing to fight corruption?
Now, you see, let me go back to the same word, that corruption is a very complex animal. As members of parliament, we have the role of oversight and legislation. In our oversight role, for instance, in Public Accounts Committee, we get the reports from the Auditor General. After getting these reports, we sit down as a committee and we make recommendations. And these recommendations go to the House of Parliament, and it's adopted. And the recommendations are made sometimes for prosecution. Now, we shall have played our role as members of parliament. When this role is played, it is now thrown to the judiciary. And once it comes to the judiciary, fellow citizens, we no longer have control. We lose control of that.
Hellena, give us your own analysis.
So, therefore, excuse me, therefore,
Honorable Drito, you're sanitizing this whole thing. Don't you get touched by the level of corruption?
I am totally touched.
Let's look at some of this. 1 billion, 2000, in the year 2000, 1 billion lost in police payments. 2003, 20 billion training ghost soldiers. 2003, 1.6 lost in Gavi. 2003, 135 million, maybe you could say that's small. 2006, 600 billion lost in the global fund. 2006, 782 billion. 2006, you talk about 1 trillion shillings. The World Bank today issued a statement. They are reviewing aid. Countries are cancelling aid. Is there a morality really reigning?
I totally agree with you, 100%. And I'm totally against this issue of corruption.
But you're sanitizing.
No, I'm not sanitizing. I'm not sanitizing it. I'm just telling you our roles in the fight against corruption. And our roles in fighting corruption doesn't only end at the door of Parliament or at the door of NRM. It is a national issue. If a policeman looks for a bribe from you, that is corruption. When you go to the local council and the LC1 demands,
we should tackle LC1 corruption and the
we should tackle all levels.
Hellena, let's get some.
One, on the issue of, when this thing goes to the courts of law, it's out of our hands. I'm very disturbed when people demand that when you are implicated in corruption, you step down. It is precisely because they do not want other processes that could, lead to an earthing of this whole thing to be compromised. You have been named in a scandal. You probably have 1.6 billion on your account. You're still in office. So the 1.6 is a form of power. You're in office. That's another form of power you wield. You can buy the media. You can buy the legal processes. And what have we seen? No one has been convicted. The only man who was convicted was the landmark judgment, Teddy Seziche, and he's still in, but we have not recovered.
Too many toes that way.
Yes, but we have not recovered. Government has not gone to, even when he was proved guilty, government has not gone to confiscate his assets and get back our money. Yeah. So even the one case which you would look back and say, oh, maybe, at least
there's
we
hope.
got back, there's hope. There's nothing. Yeah. And then we see thieves getting away with this case after case. So, for me, one, where theft has reached in this country, thieves can buy the justice system. Justice is so expensive that it is only thieves who can afford it. They buy their way through the system. I mean, the judge on Friday, was it Friday when this thing was published in the papers, when the Kutesa and Nasasi,
when they were found innocent,
the judge said these people brought a very weak case. Yeah, that was he probably had the will to tackle, what was brought, but the case was
the
so
prosecutor.
weak. Yes. So if government is in fact, if NRM, which is the party in power, is committed to, why are you bringing forward weak cases? Absolutely not.
How do we do it? Give us a silver bullet. How do we deal with corruption? If you are in government, or if you are, if they were listening to you.
See, I understand what the Honorable Member of Parliament has said, that for them, they do their work. But when it goes to police and the courts, they're helpless. It is out of their hands. But oftentimes we have heard the public crying, saying, step down, step down. Now, political will to fight corruption can be demonstrated, whereby if the members who are supposed to step down refuse to step down, the appointing authority fires them. Then that appointing authority is demonstrating, I have zero tolerance to corruption. By the way, in criminal law, if you are going to prove any crime, you have to prove it beyond reasonable doubt.
Yes.
Now, in many cases, when it is not proven beyond reasonable doubt, then the person walks away scot-free. But in the eyes of the general public and the average person,
yes,
the person did it because there is evidence, but it doesn't meet the test of beyond reasonable doubt. In my language, we have a saying that when your brother is wrong or at fault, you talk to him or you tell him like you hate him. Because of that love, you don't want them
tough love.
Tough love. Now, you asked, but here NRM, why are you criticizing this? Yes, NRM must purge itself so that it keeps the good guys, like the Honorable here has told us. It is true that many members of parliament who belong to NRM, they are really against corruption, but they have been held hostages by a few power brokers. They're the ones driving the parliament up and down. Money changes hands like crazy.
All right.
And somebody says A, tomorrow he says B. And you wonder, well, is this the same person who said A yesterday?
Listeners, this is Spectrum on Radio 1 tonight. What kind of actions do we need to counter corruption? Looking at other countries and their experiences. Our guests, Right Honorable Martin Drito, Madi-Okolo County MP, member of the African Parliamentarians Network Against Corruption, Miss Hellena Okiringi, Programs Manager of the Uganda Youth Network, and Dr. David Mushabe from the African Rainbow Conference. That's Peace and Non-Violence. And you will be able to contribute to this discussion at some stage. Honorable Drito, should corruption be classified as a human rights abuse?
Yeah, basically corruption is a human rights abuse, because if you look at the cost of corruption and instances where people are dying because they don't have medical facilities, it's as good as shooting somebody with a gun in war crimes. So there's no question about it.
Should we classify it also as a crime against humanity?
It has to be.
We need an international court on that.
Absolutely.
So we take some of these men in suits to the Hague.
They should be taken.
Hellena, let's look at our institutions. Do we have them? Do we have structure? Do we have the structures to fight corruption? DPP, IGG, as Auditor General, can they fight? Do we have enough, or do we have loopholes?
And to be sincere, there's a school of thought that actually thinks these institutions are the problem. Because if you, for example, looked at, I think it was a World Bank report, 2005, we were losing 500 billion to corruption. Today,
we have 7 years ago.
Yes. Today we have more institutions, we have more reports, all these things. We know that thieves, they walk amongst us, they come to us.
We know the fountain of theft.
We know the fountain of theft, but today we are losing
2
trillion. We are losing 2 trillion. So I think these institutions are just making this whole corruption thing more sophisticated. Yeah. The courts are now, safe havens for thieves. So I do not know if these institutions are actually what we need.
What do you mean they are making it worse? Explain that for us.
What I mean by making it worse is if you can go to court, and you're almost sure. Last week in the papers, Mr. Kazinda was quoted to have said he enjoyed the drama. If you can turn our courts that are supposed to deliver justice
into drama,
into theaters, then what are you doing? And then what's painful is these commissions of inquiry are very expensive, very, very costly. You're using taxpayers' money to carry out investigations which end up impotent, which don't deliver justice for people. So for me, this institutionalization is actually, I think, part of the problem.
But they've attached people's properties. They are going to sell them. Conrad Plaza here, $9 million. We don't know who's going to buy them, but they've attached them and they're going to say, this government really is serious.
My challenge is not talk. I want it done. I want it done. I have had so many promises. Yeah, I have had. I'm just 26 years, so I'm as old as the regime. I am not wary of promises.
And you look like a mature woman. I was a grown-up at that time. Go on.
I am not wary of promises. I'm not wary of rhetoric. So I want it done. I want it done. Let those buildings be sold, and let our ICU, for goodness sake, become functional. Let our mothers get off hospital floors.
ICU is the intensive care unit.
Yes, let it become functional. Let our mothers get off hospital floors.
Flow in the pipes in the hospital.
Masaka, for example, we hear about the accidents there. Let that hospital become functional. That for me will be when institutions work. Until then, they are just dens that are hiding thieves.
Dr. David Mushabe, talk to us about those institutions. You think that some people will say it's defeated. So I mean, of the Auditor General giving serious reports. This government must be what?
I think the Auditor General is doing his job, but you see what he does. He goes like, it's like the one who crucified Jesus.
He washed his hands.
After that, he washed his hands.
And so you go and kill them, man.
Yes, the Auditor General announces facts and presents them, and he says, I wash my hands, do your work.
Oh, you mean the Auditor General is like Pontius Pilate?
I don't know. I'm not comparing them, but I thought I would bring that example. But the multiplicity and the duplicity of roles in our government is also another source of the problem. The commissions of inquiry if you conduct your research world over, they are just meant to pacify the masses.
Oh.
For the masses to think that the government is doing something.
Kasubi Tomb's fire. They sit in a place.
It's for pacification. Commissions of inquiry have never accomplished anything. They just pacify the masses. The masses think something is serious, something serious is going on. The government has taken serious steps to correct this, and when it is published, it is just put on the bookshelf. So, but we need, probably what we need to address is, sometimes, let us understand the judges, sometimes the judges' hands are tied. A case is killed at the investigation stage, also at the prosecution stage. I was reading an article which was talking about 50 ways of hiding evidence. 50 ways of hiding evidence. So if you are a judge at the bench and you have been brought a case which has no evidence, it has been killed. The movers and shakers who have the money to kill the evidence have already killed the evidence.
Right.
What do you expect the judge to do? To just say, look, me, I'm upholding justice. From what you have put in front of me, I don't see any case.
You send the man
Please walk away
to go home and talk to his family and raise his children.
You leave them to sleep, whether with good conscience and try to be at peace with their God or not. But many of them have killed their conscience. They have no conscience.
Well, some people think that there are prisons without walls, and it's a worse prison, the prison that doesn't have walls. Maybe that's for other people who are experts on these matters.
But about crime against humanity.
Yes, do you agree with that?
It is, because somebody is being traumatized by jiggers, malaria, people are dying every day, TB, schools are collapsing, you are traumatizing the masses, you are killing people. It is a crime against humanity.
Honorable Martin Drito, you also accept it. But let's talk about something else. Why did police block these people protesting against corruption? And yet they're helping the government, the ruling government.
Well, you see, in fighting corruption, we should,
patriotic people.
Yeah, in fighting
they
corruption,
should be hired to teach patriotism.
yeah,
control.
in fighting corruption, we should not lose sight of the law. And one of the biggest aspects in fighting corruption, going back, is the establishing functioning institutions. Until such a time that we have functioning institutions, independent institutions, it will be virtually difficult to fight corruption.
All right.
We must have an IGG which is functional and independent. We must have a police system which is functional and independent. We must have a judiciary which is functional and independent.
All right.
Now,
okay, we'll have to go for a break. This is Spectrum on Radio 1. We'll go for a break. We'll be back. The talk tonight. What kind of actions do we need to counter corruption? Looking at what other countries are doing. We'll be back. Do stay tuned.
Discover the new invigorating taste of Red Vodka Lemon. Red Vodka Lemon. Reinvent the night. Not for sale to persons under 18.
Excuse me, guys. Let me through, please. Yes. What? Check this guy. Goodness, dude, what are you doing? Get real. Just move. Just what? A little bit. Man, what are you doing bringing a cow into the sitting room? It's just for when I want milk. Just what? Just please move. Let it come and sit here.
Show me this guy. You cannot keep a cow in your home, but you can get the freshness of its milk straight from the farm into your home. Get fresh dairy milk for freshness straight from the farm every day. Fresh Diary, so fresh.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90.
Welcome back on Spectrum tonight. What kind of actions do we need to counter corruption? Looking at what other countries are doing. Our guests tonight, Honorable Martin Drito, Madi-Okolo County MP, member of the African Parliamentarians Network Against Corruption, Miss Hellena Okiringi, Programs Manager of the Uganda Youth Network, Dr. David Mushabe, from the African Rainbow Conference. That's a peace and non-violence NGO. You will be able to call in and contribute to this discussion. Honorable Drito, you are part of the group that are trying to campaign for an immunity for Museveni when he leaves power. What did you have in mind? Why do you want immunity for him? He's an innocent man. He's done nothing. He does done us only good.
Well, you know, when I talk about immunity against prostitution, I'm not looking at Mushabe as an individual. I'm looking at the institution of the president. Uganda has had many presidents, and Uganda is going to have many presidents after Mushabe. But I'm looking at a situation today. When you look at our history, 26 years, we have had one president. Since 1960.
Is that long or not?
It's wrong, of course. Since 1962, how many presidents?
This young woman's
since 1962, we have had 9 presidents. Some have lasted 2 months less. And therefore, when you want to move forward, sometimes you must make sacrifices. To have a clear, clean transition, it is a sacrifice that we must make along the way. And when I talk about that immunity, I'm not creating the wheel. We're already having this in other countries like Tanzania. We have this in countries like Namibia. We have it in countries like Malawi. So I'm trying to create an environment where our presidents should be able to come out.
They can go home and do other things. Go home, whether they choose to look after cows or to look after ducks, they can do that in peace.
So
because our time is very limited, is Uganda's civil society strong enough to bring about change? We saw you with placards at the Uma Showground.
Given, of course, like every other actor, we all have a role to play. And I think, yes, civil society does have the numbers, civil society does have the strength, and the renewed will to take this fight to another level. Yes, I believe we can. I believe if we organize ourselves even more, because we are already organized, even more, and just count the cost of this, as a price we have to pay to redeem this country from thieves. I am very positive, absolutely
sure. You think the country has been taken captive by thieves?
Yes, by thieves, yes.
Dr. David Mushabe, are donors justified in ending aid? The World Bank says they want to take away our aid. These Scandinavian countries, why do they do those things to us?
Yes, they are justified. Because my suspicion is that they have been patient for a long time. They said, look, even though there is thievery, let us keep sending their money. Probably some of it will trickle down to the needy people.
Let me
have come to a realization that none trickles down to the needy people.
The World Bank issued a statement this afternoon. They say that, recent allegations indicate heavy corruption, fiduciary environment in Uganda needs to be strengthened, blah, blah, blah. They say in light of these recent events, the World Bank Group is reviewing its development assistance to Uganda's aid, while also strengthening its own measures to ensure that its funds are used for their intended purposes. They're trying to be sure this money does not end up with the thieves of this world, of this country. Are they doing enough, really?
They are not doing enough.
What should they do?
What they should do right now, they know.
They should give money to individuals. What do you want them to do?
Who's corrupt right now? They should put a travel embargo on those plunderers of our nation. They should freeze their assets, which they are hiding in their countries. Then the donation should go directly to the grassroots, not go through some umbrella here in Kampala, run by some political bureaucrats that tap it and use it otherwise. Now, let me probably make a comment on Honorable's presidential immunity concept. I agree with him, but I think it should not be open check. It should be limited.
What do you mean?
Time.
What do you mean?
For example, I understand that Kenya had to adopt that kind of arrangement so that Arab Moi would retire peacefully, and so that even some of the money that many of his henchmen had planned that should remain in Kenya and be invested there.
But the government office took away a forest that he appropriated 16 years ago. Daniel Arab Moi. They took away several thousand.
His forest.
Well, they took it away.
Well, that's okay, that's good, but I think that is just they are scratching on the surface. He still has like 99.99% of his wealth, and I think we should do it just for purposes of peaceful transition. And I think we should have a pressure group that campaigns to embrace on the current establishment that this is good for them, it is good for posterity. Short of that, the other means might be more destructive, and we don't want to go back to the old days.
What do you mean? Which means?
Because when people are frustrated and they're left with no choice, what would happen? How how did the NRM come to power? People had been frustrated. They said, let's resort to this. It was one of the most risky means, and I don't want us to go back to those old days. So that's why I think that this exit strategy, the presidential immunity, the amnesty, and then we start on a new stage. But we pass along, we say from now on, see, whenever Jesus forgave people their sins, he said,
sin no more.
So let us pass along, say, now from now on, those people have sinned in the past are forgiven, but the buck stops here. Probably that would make everybody comfortable to say, okay, now let me stop here, and it would prevent new sinning. But we should also include there that whoever continues sinning, their property or their wealth should be nationalized.
First of all, I think
by government.
Okay, maybe before we come to you, Hellena, David, but we are also a very ungrateful country. There are people who shed their blood to liberate us. We've given them nothing. When Tanzania liberated us from Idi Amin, we gave them a check. We've not helped these people. We've not done anything. They destroyed their families. They shed blood for this country. We've not given them anything. We are a very ungrateful nation. The people who fought for us 5 years.
But you see, when those people went to fight, many of them didn't know they would come back. And secondly, I would like to believe that it was out of conviction that they wanted to liberate.
Well, even Tanzania, but we gave them a check, several $1 million.
Yeah, but you see, when you fight, you're not just fighting for yourself. You're fighting for all the citizens to liberate your country. That's what nationalism is all about. And I'm surprised that in the Parliament right now, Honorable, we have just a handful of NRM MPs talking about. They're the ones we see on the floor of Parliament talking against corruption. Everybody else is quiet. Whereas I would like to believe that majority of NRM MPs are against corruption. I'm left to wonder, why do we have a handful? And those handful have been labeled as rebels. Why does everybody that speaks truth on the floor of Parliament, that is bitter or seems to be against the establishment, is labeled a rebel?
First of all, I hope that this discussion about peaceful exit of power is not too late. Why? We have an 83% unemployed youth populace. That is a very dangerous statistic. Yeah, it's a powder cake. If you have statistics, if you look at countries where war outbreaks, it is because young people are agitated. In Uganda, we now have the second highest unemployment rate in the world. The way good laws take long to be implemented in Uganda, we have the policy discussion phase and then implementation. I'm not sure we have the time to discuss this. And while 83% of our youth are unemployed, you're swindling 600 billion, you're throwing around 1.2 trillion. Our National Youth Council receives only, its annual budget is 1 billion shillings. Out of that 1 billion, given this theft, only 600 million shillings reaches our National Youth Council.
The rest is spent on fuel, maybe.
Only 600. Now, the fuel and what have you is in that 600. Out of that 600, only 4 million goes to 122 districts. Each district receives 122 million. The same youth you are telling we have no resources to employ you, we have no money to create for you entrepreneurship centers, are watching the news every day, and this money is being thrown about. I don't know whether it's taking people for granted, but for you to ask for peaceful exit, I think we are pushing it too far. When we are seeing this every day, when we are seeing the reality that there is enough for our need, there is enough to educate our youth, there's enough to improve, the quality of youth we have, there's enough to create opportunities for them, but it's just not being done. We may be pushing it when we ask, for peaceful exit, and yet we are creating the conducive environment for that kind of outbreak to thrive. So I think we need to think about this a little more. We can't be saying if we want peaceful transfer of power, let us deal with this step, because it is these things that anger the public. It is it's me going to hospital and I have no drugs, and someone flies their child to Switzerland. Honestly, it is my mother giving birth on a hospital floor. it's just not fair. Those are the things that, you know, make me wonder, why should you exit peacefully? Okay, it's not that that is what we want, but there's just no reason. Okay, and that is the plight of young people today. So I think even as we make these demands, I think we need to put it in context here, because the people who are going to be for or against it, are the majority, are young people. So I think for me, I hope we are not stretching it. I hope we are not pushing our luck here.
I am reminded of the South African Peace and Reconciliation Commission.
Yes.
It was not easy. It was a painful thing for the black South Africans or the black Africans to say, look, let us forget all those decades or the centuries of apartheid and how we have suffered. Let us forgive you,
right,
and start on a clean. Sometimes
you need to pay up.
Forgiveness is
for the sake of the future.
very painful. But what is the probative value of that forgiveness? That we may have a
clean
future instead of spiraling into perpetual violence.
Okay. I mean, when you mentioned South Africa, I remember in 1990 when Nelson Mandela came here. I was at a press conference at State House in Entebbe, and he was asked, "Can you tell us what happened during the 27 years?" And I look at, he was always laughing, but this time he's stiffened and he said that 27 years, let us forget about them. Honorable Drito, let's look at this proposal of viewers. How do you want to foment it? Give us some more clarity on that. People living power with impunity.
Well, you see, as the doctor has said, you know, and as I think, you know, for us to move forward, there's a price to be paid. For us to be vindictive, there's a price to be paid. Which is a heavier price? Vindictiveness or forgiveness? And for me, I think if we're going to transit and have peaceful transition of power, you know, we as Ugandans must open a chapter of debate to see how can we move forward. And there must be a price to be paid. If there was no outlet in Kenya, there would have been serious bloodshed. If there was no outlet to be given, South Africa would have still been in bloodshed up to today. And therefore, we must be able to forgive. We're a God-loving country. We cannot live on this issue of vengeance all along. And when you're talking of forgiveness, of immunity, you must also look at the positives and the negatives that the system has done. Do the negatives outweigh the positives? If we answer this question with a clear conscience, we know that the positives very much outweigh the negatives.
All right.
And just to move a little bit forward,
yes,
with also what my sister Helen here has said about the issue of youth and so forth. To me, the issue of unemployment of youth is not an issue that can be handled emotionally. The issue of the unemployment of youth is an element of economic development and economic policies. Now, when you look at a country whose population, to the point of 76%, is engaged in agriculture, receiving about 4-5% of budget for that sector,
there's an imbalance.
Yeah, for me as an economist, I see there's already an imbalance there. Therefore, no, we should tackle these things at institutional level. What is the National Planning Authority doing? Are we following the National Planning Authority objectives? Uganda is known for having the best policies drawn in this world,
and we export.
But Uganda has got the worst record for implementation of its good policies.
We need to move forward. So very briefly, would you agree that donors, instead of simply cutting it, they should, slap travel bans on the thieves, freeze their assets, and direct money to the grassroots instead of sending them to these corrupt people?
To me, the issue of travel bans and so forth is more of it's more of treating the symptoms. I think we should go deeper than that. For instance, how do we move the aids to the man in the village, to the woman in the village? So we must create structures. For instance, where money may not have necessarily to hang up in the capital here, and move it direct to the grassroots in Teso, in Madi-Okolo, so that this theft which is centralized is eliminated.
Maybe they look for it in Madi-Okolo. Well, listeners, this is Spectrum on Radio 1. You can call us now, 0414-348-111, 031-226-0, 390-031-226-1390. Spectrum, hello? Yes, sir, your name? Yes, Honorable Eresu. Sounds like you. Some people think it was going to be misused because it came at a time of riots, and they thought the president wanted to use it against to quell the riots, basically.
And that is the problem we have in this country. We think in terms of other things, not looking at simple objectivity. Number three, we were talking about changing power, that the military is changing power. So we are saying for so long, fine. But I want to tell you whether there is going to be a guarantee that those who will come in will not be going to riot.
All right, okay. Honorable Resu, thank you very much for calling in. Spectrum, hello?
Yes, good evening, Brother Edmond.
Good evening, my friend. Your name?
This is not true, sir.
Yes, sir.
Actually, as long as they treat it too much, people still don't go fighting in the bush war, that kind of process. Actually, corruption will not be actually overcome. But the solution would be actually to confiscate the wealth of those people who are corrupt.
Spectrum, hello?
Hello, everyone. Well done.
Thank you. Your name?
Sorry,
Stephen, yes?
one of the things is that the corrupt must actually manage to the constitution of the academic system. Very people have to
Spectrum, hello?
Hello.
Yes, sir. Your name?
My name is Robert.
Robert, yes?
I was answering against my contribution on corruption. Corruption is immediate right from the ground. The society actually almost running corruption, but you know, for example, look at it, you apply how it is going to work.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Corruption should be addressed from the way they use stress. Spectrum, hello? Good evening. Your name?
My name. Yes, when we are showing off that we need to fight corruption, I think that we must as well also play the citizenry role, whereby we see a general having a number of acres of land. They show you that you have maybe 100 acres of free general. When you go to his salary, it's only to the tune of just a million or two. But when you look at the wealth that he has bought, sincerely speaking, it shows that he is fighting of corruption. One that we also as citizens try to do something before we go to the IDP.
Spectrum, hello?
21.
Yes, sir. Your name?
My name is Hussein. I sound like a tribune that video. Point number one, I'm surprised in the Parliament because know that when somebody is supposed to be out of power, in case you think of a hospital period, he will do good for another candidate to come and compete. And that one has a different corruption. Point number two, unless we get a native service whereby in the morning the minister is representing the
hello. Good evening, your name? Owere, Mr. Owere. A final caller for tonight, your name? Yes, sir, your name? Come again? Yes, Felix in Seta. My hometown. Okay, let's get back to the studio. Honorable Martin Drito. Well, you can respond. Someone says they should take away the academic papers.
Well,
maybe they should even take away the baptism card.
I don't really think taking academic certificates and so forth will have a very serious impact on corruption. But I think what we need is to make sure that the laws for fighting corruption are properly used and implemented, because the laws are there. Nobody can say the laws are not there. The laws are there, but the laws are not being properly enforced, and that is where the Achilles heel is, the enforcement of the laws against corruption. We have got all these in the provisions of the law, in the penal code, in our constitution. It is there, but it's not being implemented. So the first thing that we have to do is to make sure that it goes back to what I said earlier on, the enforcement of our institutions to do their jobs freely, independently, and efficiently. Unless we have that, we might have the best laws in this world. If we're not enforcing them, it will be a waste of time. So it is the enforcement of those, like the laws that are already in place, that is very, very important for us. I need to say something a little bit about the money for the cars, Mr. Warren. 103. The 103. What you see, the job of a member of parliament is not as simple as most people think. For example, a person who lives at the back of Kotido and he has to get to his constituency cannot get to his constituency in a Corolla.
Yes.
And so, because the roads are not accessible, the terrain is bad.
The terrain is bad.
The terrain
that's
is
how
bad.
God created.
Yeah, the terrain is bad. And therefore, for you to be able to get to your constituency and do your work, you need a workable car. And the average price of a workable car today,
it's around that much.
It's around that much.
Even more. Hellena, talk to us. You don't seem to agree. You think the roads are good?
Push for better roads. Don't buy. How long are we going to keep? With the papers. The other day we saw a Benz, 6 billion shillings. You know that can do a great road in the village. So push for better roads. Don't buy better cars. Push for better roads. That's more sustainable, because even your children will use those roads. As we conclude, I just have two things to say on this corruption matter. What do we do as Ugandans to the person of the president as the fountain of honor? He must demand and he must come out clearly. All thieves implicated must step down and they must resign.
All of them?
All of them. If your head of government business is a thief, then what business is he heading? You cannot be named in not one, not two, 5 corruption scandals. You have actually not even gone to court. So are you serious? I think it is important for the person of the president, if he is serious. Our scandals have gone through the roof. This has never been seen. I'm sure worldwide. We have broken a record. We are tired of topping Transparency International ratings as thieves. We are tired. It's becoming embarrassing for us when we go to other countries and meet youth. They know us because of the scandals in this country. It is embarrassing. So let the president take the lead. All these people implicated step down because of the urgency of the matter. 2, all their assets must be confiscated. In the interest of people, all their assets must be confiscated to the public and to Ugandan citizens. 1, this is not the time for fear. This is the time to be bold. Let us isolate these thieves. Don't invite
How do you
them.
isolate?
Don't invite them to your funerals. If somebody has been named in a theft
But some of them
scandal,
give good speeches at funerals and they even donate
they are
money.
politicians. That is what they do. It is an art. It is an art for politicians. If they were statesmen,
Even in churches.
if they were statesmen,
They
they would
speak well.
do what they say. Yeah, if they were statesmen, these are
I drop something in
politicians.
the basket.
No. Actually, churches should start receiving. Should start rejecting this. Let me just make my conclusion.
Yes, my sister.
To all citizens, let us isolate and reject these people. Don't invite them for your weddings. Don't invite them for your funerals. Yes, don't invite them for your weddings. Yes, I mean
They can attend the meetings, but you don't even know.
no. That they are giving you back your own money, most likely.
Dr.
Just
David Mushabe.
isolate them completely. Yes.
All right, I stop you only because I have to, but go on, David.
I agree with Helen that we should isolate these people because when they come to our functions, they are taken to the high tables. They sit in the front row. It's like we are
Like the Pharisees.
Glorifying.
Like the Pharisees of the Bible.
Yes, we are glorifying the thievery. But Honorable, if you could campaign and win while driving a Corolla, why wouldn't you drive a Corolla after you have become an MP and you have a better salary? I think that is a very serious point. The Parliament should consider that. The reason for unemployment is because there is a gap between plunder and population explosion.
You work so hard to get heaven, and when you get to heaven, you live like you're on earth. Go on, sir.
If there is no plunder, there would not be huge unemployment. But
Well,
now there is a gap between the thieving.
Time cuts us short.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Jadiagas. Honorable Martin Drito, Member of Parliament from Madi-Okolo County, also member of the African Parliamentarians Network Against Corruption. Thank you for coming to Spectrum. Miss Hellena Okiringi, Programs Manager, the Uganda Youth Network. Very elaborate. She was born the year the government came to power. Doctor, I have to scratch myself to believe, to really take that in. Dr. David Mushabe from the African Rainbow Conference, a Peace and Non-Violence NGO. Thank you for tuning in. I've been your host, Edmond. To Spectrum. We'll be back tomorrow.
The Uganda Communications Commission, UCC, Broadcasting Council, BC, is the regulatory body